Unfiltered, the official Sunderland AFC podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to SAFC Unfiltered, the official podcast from Sunderland Football Club, sponsored of course as ever by Alpha Security. Me and Danny are heading down to the Stadium of Light this afternoon to speak to the COO, that's the Chief Operating Officer, Steve Davison. We'll be bringing you him on the pod very, very soon. But before we speak to Steve, Dan, I just want to speak to you about where we've got to since the last time we did a podcast together. It was Grant Ledbetter we spoke to in the middle of last month, and since then we've moved to third in the table, and we've also got a trophy at Wembley.
Yeah, there's a lot happened since we had Grant on the pod, isn't there? But the lads have been going well on the pitch, clawed our way into the contention of the automatics, haven't we? And there's 11 games to go now, and we're right amongst it up the top of the table. So still a long way to go, but we're in with a good shout, and obviously, as you mentioned there, a good win down at Wembley as well, amongst the good results recently.
Yeah, players coming back from injury as well, and Ross Stewart as well making a good couple of cameos. It shows that the strength and depth of the squad really might be a big factor as we move into the business end of the season.
Yeah, and it's needed to be, hasn't it? I think with the amount of injuries and lads having to play out of position, I think Max Power obviously getting moved from centre midfield to right back frequently, and Luke O'Nien doing a good job in there at left centre half. And as you mentioned, Ross Stewart finally getting a run out, getting his debut goal at Accrington Stanley in the week last week. So everyone's chipping in and wanting to be a part of it. And it shouldn't be too long before we've got a few of those injured boys back, hopefully at the weekend down at Bristol.
You've been involved in a couple of famous promotion sides at Sunderland Football Club over the years. What will the dressing room be like at the minute? What will morale be like?
Yeah, confidence will be sky high with the boys, I think. Going into games, yeah, we have had to battle and scrape through a few of those, but again, when you're in that run of results, really, and we can see checking the table regularly now, we keep nicking away at the teams above us, and we've got up to third at the minute, 2 points behind Peterborough. Got them coming up, haven't we, next week as well? So there's a lot to play for, and each game at the moment in time feels bigger than the last one. But that's what you want, really. You don't want to be sat in mid-table, nothing to play for. 10, 11 games to go now. We're right amongst it up the top of the table. Still with the teams above us to play. So looking forward to the run-in now.
We're going to hear from the guest on this edition of SAFC Unfiltered in a second. But it's good to get a different side, a different aspect, a different viewpoint from someone within the football club, particularly someone like Steve Davison, who's came in only in January, and he's really hit the ground running, hasn't he, from what we gather, from what we know from the inside and what we can see written on the outside as well. But there's a whole mechanic of the side of the club which fans don't normally see, which you're hoping to get out of Steve this afternoon, isn't there? Yeah,
it'll be an interesting conversation with Steve to see where he's at. And as you mentioned, he's come into the club when it's obviously at one of its lowest points in its history, really, being in the third tier of English football. There's a lot to go on behind the scenes, I think, from previous owners, and with COVID as well hitting the club, staff being furloughed. I think gradually they're going to be coming back into jobs. But he's got a lot on his plate since he's come in, and be interesting to see how he stands as well in terms of how much of an effect his work and his role has on the footballing side of things as well.
Okay, then let's head down to the Stadium of Light where we'll speak to COO, Chief Operating Officer, that's Steve Davison. Welcome to SAFC Unfiltered, Chief Operating Officer Steve Davison. How are you doing, Steve?
Great, thanks very much.
You've been working in the club since January this year, but you are no stranger to the Stadium of Light. You're a fan, aren't you?
I am indeed, yes. I've been a supporter all my life. I was born in Sunderland, but moved away when I was only 4 years old. But I've been a regular visitor back to the area, not just to watch the football, but to visit family and friends and things. So I'm very familiar with the Stadium of Light and Roker Park before that, in fact.
Have you got any favourite memories which stick in mind where when you think about your club, you think about that moment when, or anything like that? Any particular players or managers?
Okay, so I was a big fan of Jim Montgomery when I was growing up, as a lot of people are. I was in the Jim Montgomery fan club, actually.
All right, I didn't even know there was a proper thing. What did you get for that? Did you get a badge or a certificate?
A pair of goalie gloves.
Yeah.
I got some photos. You got a regular newsletter as well, and I got to meet Jim at one of the games, Luton away. I seem to remember it's one of the highlights of my life growing up. I met one of my heroes at a football game. Fortunately, we won 2-1, which was even better. But he happened to be injured that day, so sat with me all through the game. So that was really quite a big highlight for me.
Yeah, and post-COVID world, he'd probably be sitting next to you for every game because he's always here, Jimmy, isn't he? He does all the events for the club as well.
That's
He's
right, yeah.
such a great ambassador still, isn't he, for Sunderland Football Club? What about favourite manager looking back? Was there a period of time when you...
Well, obviously, Peter Reid. I think he's definitely my favourite manager. Although I do think that if you go a long way further back, I don't think Alan Brown got exactly all the credit he deserved for bringing through all the young players. Actually, I mean, he was very keen on developing younger talent, and I think he did a really great job at the time. I don't think he got all the credit he deserved for that.
Okay, then let's move things along a little bit then and speak about not just your role, but this week the club actually started a discourse again with fan groups as well, didn't they? And the Red and White Army and affiliated supporter branches. How important was that to be restarted? And can you give us a flavour of how the meeting went and who was there?
Okay, so I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the club is essentially for the fans, and we've got a great deal of responsibility as the people who are running the football club to make sure that we're engaging with the supporters and the community more generally. I think it was a great shame that the fans groups meetings had stopped for a period of time. I think that was a shame, although I could understand why there were some difficulties with the takeover going on. So certainly we will be having regular quarterly meetings with the supporter collective going forwards. I think last night's meeting was, as you might imagine, a little bit unusual because we couldn't meet in person, so it was all over Zoom. We did a short presentation to the groups. And basically we went through what some of the plans are for the club, tried to explain where we're coming from, what we're trying to achieve, where we're going, what our strategy was, etc. So we gave some insight into what we're trying to achieve as a football club.
That's good. And you perhaps spoke about what your role is at the club, maybe for the purposes of the podcast and the fans listening as well. If you wouldn't mind just explaining what your role as Chief Operating Officer involves and what it happens on a day-to-day basis. Just give us a bit of an insight into what the club's like at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So basically I'm responsible for everything that doesn't involve the football side of the club. So it's all of the non-football activities within the club. And I guess you can probably simplify my job down to just making sure that we can earn as much profitable revenue as we can to provide the investment for Christian and the footballing side to spend it. I mean, I think that's basically the remit that I've got, is to try to maximise the revenue that we can earn, such that we can invest as much as we possibly can on the footballing side. And
is that something you've done in your career in the past? If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of an overview of your professional career to date.
Yeah. So as I think I've mentioned before, I've worked for a company called Atkins, an engineering consultant, for 35 years, which is obviously a long time in any one organisation. I don't think that would happen very often going forwards. But I was there for 35 years. I started as effectively an engineer, starting although as a mathematician originally, and basically what my job became as Director of Operations for Atkins. So it's basically looking after all of the core business processes and all of the activities of the club that the business that don't involve that didn't involve actually the client-facing work. So it's how the business actually operated was what I was responsible for.
Okay, and when you came into the role here at Sunderland Football Club, was there anything that needed or still needs immediate attention, and then do you put in plans for short, medium and long-term goals, similar to what we spoke about with Christian as well, which he has on the footballing side?
Yeah, okay, so when I started, I mean, obviously, I came here.
You came in a very strange period of time as well, during a global pandemic. Let's be honest, Steve.
That's absolutely true. It was a bit odd. I left one company in a pandemic and joined another. When it's a bit odd, really. But I arrived, and I guess as a fan, I had this perception as to how the club operated, and some of those ideas were probably well founded, that it was pretty well as I thought, and others I was completely wide of the mark. So my first job really was to just get an understanding of how the club operates, to make sure that I had a good understanding of what was going to be needed to be done, and really that was around engaging with as many people as I could in the early few weeks of my time here, and I guess my overwhelming feeling after those first few weeks was that actually the club has been through a fair amount of turmoil over the last 6 or 7 years. I guess it was probably longer than I'd realised. It had more impact on the people at the club. I mean, basically the club has been up for sale for a period of time, and probably going back even to the latter years of Ellis Short's time here, the club had been up for sale, and that created a great deal of uncertainty, but also meant that there was a lot more short-term planning going on than long-term planning, and I guess that people were basically focused on doing everything for the short term, protecting the cash flow of the club, etc. And that's not really very conducive to building a long-term, sustainable, successful business, which is clearly what we're aiming to do. So I guess one of the things I learned fairly early on was we have to open people's minds and ideas to actually thinking longer term, which when that's not happened for 6 or 7 years, that does take a little bit of time. But everybody's welcoming the idea. I mean, I think it's an easier environment and a more pleasant environment to be working in if you're thinking that you're trying to plan for the longer term. So I think everybody's been really open to actually coming up with ideas. They've been really forward thinking in some of the thoughts that they've got about what we could do. Not to say that we can do everything that everyone is coming up with, but actually at least it allows us to come up with a really good idea of where our priorities might lie going forwards. But of course, this is all in the context of a time when we don't have anywhere near as much revenue coming in as we would normally have, because obviously there's no supporters in the stadium. So I think we've got to bear in mind that there are still some challenges around the finances of the club, because with no revenue or very little revenue, it's quite hard to plan longer term. I mean, we're all hopeful that supporters will come back at the start of next season, and they will have full stadia back in the future, but I think there's no guarantee of that. We're still really dependent on how the government is able to deal with a pandemic. So we've got to come up with pretty flexible plans, I think, is in the short term, whilst building for a longer term future.
Yeah, Danny, just as an ex-pro yourself, are you aware of playing for a club? You've been at some massive clubs, Danny, but are you ever conscious of a short, medium or long-term vision for the club?
Yeah, I think the current set of players certainly will be aware of what's going on off the pitch. Yeah, ultimately their job is to concentrate on training day in, day out, and to try and produce on the pitch on a Saturday, which we are doing to some extent at the minute, aren't we? Getting ourselves up to third in the table, and there's a feel-good factor around the place. But they'll be aware of the new owner coming in, and the club almost trying to get itself back on track where we've been the last 4 or 5 years, on a downward spiral really. And a lot of the boys now are obviously playing for contracts as well at the club. There's a lot of lads out of contract. I think Lee Johnson mentioned it a few weeks ago in one of his interviews, that when he was asked about the current situation with contracts with players, well, they go out and earn their contracts, i.e. get the job done, get us promoted, and then we'll see where we go from there. So yeah, you are aware, of course you are, of what's going on, and with the owner coming in and with the finances available, are they going to be, again, if we get promoted, where are they going to be looking to go in terms of player recruitment for next season as well, and are some of these lads going to be a part of it?
How important is it, Steve, joining the dots between, your star striker this season, Charlie Wyke, and the person designing the marketing for the season card campaign? How important is it, like, across the company, everyone's pulling in the same direction?
Well, alignment is really, really important. And I think that you only really get that when you've got a very clear strategic view for the business as a whole, that we can then communicate to everybody, and we can then explain it to all of the people who work within the club, but also, as importantly, the supporters and the community. And this is something that we did go through last night with the supporter collective as to what that strategic vision looked like. And it's something that we did on a staff Zoom call earlier on in the year as well. Just once we had formulated our idea around what the strategy was about, we've actually communicated that to the staff as well.
I was going to say, Steve, as well, I know you've mentioned there you're solely involved in terms of the financial revenue side of the game, and do you have very little contact then with Christian and Lee Johnson in terms of any of the football side of it? Because it obviously binds together in terms of if we get promoted, if the fans are back in next season, if we're in the Championship, it's a lot of ifs, but if we do get up, then the crowds are more than likely going to be bigger, more revenue coming into the club shops, etc. So,
I speak to Christian every day.
Yeah.
And between Christian, Kirill and myself, we have weekly meetings at the moment where we're sharing what we've learnt during the week and issues, topics, opportunities that have come up that we need to deal with. So we're working really closely together, the three of us.
Yeah.
In fact, I probably have less dealings with Lee on a day-to-day basis, although I tend to see him when I'm over at the academy, which I try and spend one day a week over at the academy as well, just to make sure that we're properly joined up.
Was there any point, being a Sunderland fan, and you've watched where the club have gone from to where we are right now, although we are on a bit of a incline at the moment as well, was there any point as a successful businessman you thought about picking up the phone and contacting the club and saying what you could see were obvious mistakes the club were making?
So in the past, I've been... I've obviously observed what's going on at the football club over a lot of years, and I think it's fair to say I saw some of the groups that were running the club were more successful at running a business than others, and you have to admire what Bob Murray's done at the football club. He had such a great vision for the football club, and not just the football club, but it was the city as a whole as well. And his legacy of the infrastructure that's been put in place is absolutely astonishing when you think about it, and the foresight that he had. So I've got nothing but admiration for what Sir Bob has done over the years. I think that. Nobody comes and tries to run a business and does it with the intention of failing. So I think you got to respect what people's strategies are. That people might have slightly different strategies from the ones that maybe you wanted to implement. But I did look at some of the things that had gone on, and I did tear my hair out from time to time, thinking, well, actually, I'm not sure I'd have done that. Whether or not anybody would have listened to me is a whole new matter. But I did look at some things that I thought I wouldn't have done that as myself if I'd been running the club. So
similar to the fans in a way. Then when they're watching the game on a match day, and why has he made that substitution? And why is it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, sometimes I have to just remember I'm not a fan when I'm running the
You're in the director's box now.
Exactly. So I've got to take my fan hat off sometimes and make a rational business decision, and I'm not saying that they ever diverge, but sometimes I get a bit carried away, especially when I'm watching the game. I forget that I'm actually a director now rather than just a fan.
Well, I think the fans would appreciate genuine fans being involved at the top end of the club, and it's people like yourself who can make real difference because you have an understanding of just business, of the club, but of the city as well. Going forward, what do you think the club can do better in regard to connecting the people of the city to the club? is the things like working with local businesses, working with local children, working with local clubs, which the club have always done to a certain extent. But can you see real gaps there and real opportunities there?
Okay, so my view about this is reasonably simple. As far as I'm concerned, the success of the football club is absolutely has to be absolutely aligned with the success of the city as a whole, and that's all parts of the city and the broader community in and around Durham as well. So I do feel very strongly that if the football club's to be successful, then the city and the community have to be successful as well. So when you think about it that way, building really close, well-aligned links across all of those areas is something that is going to be absolutely essential and an essential part of our plan going forward. So I can see all sorts of opportunities to work more closely together. I think we're really well blessed here, and again, legacy from Sir Bob with the foundation, for example, as a vehicle by which we can engage with the community more broadly. And I think
so you'd want to work more in tandem with the foundation?
Absolutely we would, yeah, because I think they do fantastic work. I've been really impressed at the work that they've been doing over the years since they've been in existence. So I do think that's an important part of what we're doing. But equally with places like the city council as well, and also the university. I mean, I think we've got to work hand in hand. I think it's to our mutual benefit to work together, and I think everybody sees that. And I think I have been overwhelmed by the support I've been given from all of the people from around the community that have been in touch with me since I took up the role.
And from a commercial point of view as well, how important is it that businesses and firms and people who started businesses within the city and then gone on to bigger things, how important is it to work with those people?
Well, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, they all live in the city or in the community, and so I think they've got a really important role to play in the success of the area, and I think we've got again a mutual interest in doing that.
And it's those firms. Sorry to interrupt those, Steve, but it's those firms which have stuck with the club, isn't it? Particularly through this time.
Yeah, I mean we're very grateful for the support that those firms have given the club, and in fact all of the supporters generally through particularly the last few years, where it's not been as let's say as attractive a proposition as it may have been in the years when we were in the Premier League, and it's to their credit that they've stuck with the club. But I guess they're all fans as well, and I mean I know it's a bit of a cliche, but Sunderland till I die is definitely something that most people in Sunderland would actually sign up to. I mean, I don't think we have much choice, do we? We love it really, and I think it's just something that we can't come to expect all the time. I think we've got to earn the fact that we've got a place to play in the society as a whole. We've got to make sure that people realise that we are here to work closely with the city.
No, I was going to touch on that there again. I mean, straight away when I came back up here in 2004, coming from the outside from Chester, and just straight away you could just
not Chesterley Street,
no, Chester miles away.
Yeah.
No, just the fact that how big the club was and what it actually means, and it's almost the heartbeat of the city, isn't it? And when things get right, obviously with ourselves under Roy Keane, getting promoted under Mick as well, and you just see what it means to the city. It just gives everyone a lift, that almost like feel good factor around the place, isn't it? And you'll know that yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, it's pretty unique in Sunderland in terms of it's because we've only really got one major sporting club in the city, so we've only got one major club to get behind, and so I think that means that all of the emphasis from people who live in the area is actually focused on the football club. So I think that is a bit different to anywhere else in the country. I would guess. So that puts even more responsibility on getting this right. I mean, we have seen times when it's been fantastic, the relationship that we've had between the city and Durham more generally and the football club, and I think that's something that we really want to try to recreate if we can. But that's got to be earned. It's not something that we can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Going forward then, Steve, how realistic is it? You touched upon early on in the chat, but how realistic is it that we will have fans back in the stadium next season in a volume which would be beneficial towards the club?
Okay, so I think it's still very uncertain. I think let's be honest. We're still a long way from getting out of all of the challenges of the pandemic, and I think we've realistically got to expect there's going to be some constraints on what we can do going forwards for some time yet to come. Yeah. So I think it's pretty realistic that we will have supporters in the stadium. I think that the plan around the operations of the ground and how people get to the ground, etc. Because the transport to and from the ground is as significant as actually what we're doing in the stadium itself. I think we can probably expect some constraints that will be placed upon us, but we'll do everything we can to find ways around that to make sure that we can operate as effectively as we can. But I think we're waiting to hear exactly what the government really is going to do around mass participation, mass audience events such as football, such as festivals, such as theatre, etc. I think
concerts
as well. Yeah, exactly. And so I do think we yet to hear what the findings are and what their proposals are. And I think we've got to rely on the fact that actually we see the continued progress in dealing with the pandemic as well over the next few months to see exactly where we stand when it comes to the start of next season.
Yeah, but while your hands are tied, I'd imagine people like yourself and Steve Neal, who's at the club as well, are constantly coming up with evolving plans to get as many fans in as possible.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we're just really about to start to come up with what our plans are for next season.
You came pretty close, didn't they, the club during just before the second peak in the virus? How close was it?
So that's obviously before my time, but I believe we were pretty close to being able to allow supporters back into the stadium. Although it was very, very small numbers. I mean, 2,000 or 4,000 is not really
in a stadium like that.
In a stadium, exactly. So, I mean, I don't want to put numbers on how many I think will be allowed. I would be very surprised if it's full capacity. Mm-hmm. But equally, I think it's we've probably got to aim for something more than 2,000 or 4,000. That doesn't make a great deal of financial sense.
Would you think a percentage on the size of the stadium would be a better plan to go down? You think 50% in the stadium, like you're looking at 25,000 really, aren't you?
That's what I would be hoping that we would be starting with, yes. I mean, that's our hope, at least. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be 40,000+, but I could certainly expect that we'll get half stadiums, and that's certainly something I think we ought to be planning for anyway.
And I'd imagine there'll be a season card campaign kicking off pretty soon as well for the club. Again, unprecedented times to launch such a campaign in such an uncertain future as well. But as you say, things are perhaps looking a bit better, and hopefully with government legislation we can make things happen. How far away are the plans for the season card campaign, and what can you genuinely offer the fans?
Okay, so we've been thinking long and hard about the season cards, and when we decided to go on sale with those season cards, there was a lot to think about in terms of preparing for the season cards, probably more than in any other season ever before. In fact, I mean, there's so many uncertainties. We've obviously got the obvious footballing uncertainty of which league we're going to be playing in next season, but we've also got the uncertainty around how many people will be allowed back into the stadium. I guess really we took a decision a while ago that until the government issued a plan as to when things were beginning to return back to normal, we wouldn't be issuing any season cards campaign. We felt it was too early with that uncertainty as well. So we waited until the government had actually made some announcements on when things were, what their plan to getting back to normal was, on whatever the new normal is going to be. So we delayed our decision on season cards. So what I can say is that season cards are going to go on sale from Monday. So everyone's going to need to take action around actually renewing their season card. We did take a fresh look at the whole question of season cards, and we've got a view that as over a 3-year period we ought to be reaching something around average championship pricing. That's assuming obviously that we are in the championship, but that's what we will be aiming for over a 3-year period, and broadly what that will mean is a 10% increase in prices for next season. But when you compare that pricing to other clubs, for example, that would only be that would be the 8th highest price in League One if we are still in League One, and then the 17th highest price in the Championship, so well below the average pricing in the Championship. And in terms of our historic pricing, it would still be the lowest price we'd actually charged in the Championship if we were in the Championship, even lower than the Roy Keane year, for example. So that's something to bear in mind, and that's 15 years ago now. So I'm sorry, Danny, but 15 years ago.
Is that long ago? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. On top of that as well, I think with people not being able to realise how much they've missed coming to the stadium, and although, as we've mentioned there, we've been on a decline in the last few years, but just the fact that missing the football, and if we do manage to get to the Championship and numbers pending with the government, I'd imagine you'd be seeing big numbers back in the stadium next season, wouldn't you?
Well, that's what we're hoping for, but I think we've got to bear in mind that we've got supporters who are in the older age groups as well, and so they may be more nervous about going into an arena like the Stadium of Light, and that they might be a little bit more nervous about taking up their season card. I mean, obviously we're going to do everything we can to make sure it's as safe as it possibly can be, but I can't underestimate that they may take a view that it's maybe going to be a little bit too risky for them, and everyone's got a personal choice about this. I mean, I think the majority though are desperate to get back into the stadium. I think, and see football. If I'm honest.
Yeah. Everyone's sick of watching it on telly every night of the week.
Sick of watching you and me. But that is something that the club have rolled out and have expanded upon during the season because of the understanding that the engagement had to be there in a time when the fans couldn't.
Absolutely, and obviously I was watching the streaming myself up until Christmas, so I'm well aware of the streaming, and I mean I think it was great that we could get the games streamed, but I mean certainly one of the early things that I wanted to do when I started here was to try and improve the streaming. I thought it was a great opportunity to engage with the supporters, and I felt that increasing to a multi-camera operation would actually be a better product for people. It would be more enjoyable to watch, and obviously we've introduced the pre-match and post-match shows, which I think make a big difference. I mean, I think streaming is going to be part of our future regardless. I think particularly because there's likely to be ongoing constraints in and around the COVID operation. I do think streaming is going to be a part of what we do longer term as well. So I think the more we can do to try and improve it and give a better service to the supporters, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
And the stats prove that the investment has been correct as well?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously it costs us more money to have more cameras, but we're definitely recovering the cost of the operation of the multi-camera. I think that's certainly true, and there'll definitely be more people watching. I mean, I think that they've probably, I would imagine they've enjoyed it more, the ones that were watching.
Helps us out as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Them replays and stuff from different angles. Yeah,
it certainly does. Steve, what is tradition on the SFC podcast Unfiltered is that Danny brings along a few quiz questions. There's been some famous casualties over the season so far. None so more than Christian Speakman, who got a famous 0 out of 5. I do believe the general knowledge today, so you're going back to general knowledge. But as you are on the podcast, Steve, unfortunately, this is your time to be put under the spotlight in Danny's quiz. Are you ready for this?
Not really, no.
Okay. They'll get nervous at this point, don't they? Everyone we get on, especially Christian, obviously. He came back for more, didn't he? He came back for round 2. But okay, so general knowledge, Steve. And the first question is, which country gifted the Statue of Liberty to the USA in 1886?
Oh, that's a good question. Which country? I probably ought to know this. I think it's France, but I'm not absolutely sure.
It is France.
Well done.
Yes. Correct. Good start, Steve.
Thank you.
Off to a flyer.
Better than Christian anyway.
He's turning off right about now. Question number 2. Which of the 4 tennis Grand Slam tournaments comes first in a calendar year?
That's the Australian Open.
Likes his tennis. There's the Australian.
I have played tennis a long time ago,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't consider it a sport.
Do you know what month it's in?
Yeah, it's in January.
It is in
actually.
January, yes. Yeah. There you are, 2 out of 2. Okay, question number 3. Which is the only European mainland country that shares the same time zone as the UK?
Okay, the only mainland European country.
Yeah.
So I believe that's Portugal.
It is Portugal.
Whoa,
Yeah.
this is impressive so far.
Chasing Lyndon Gooch down here. 5 out of 5, Lyndon.
Yeah.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
5 out of 5 on this. The winner at Wembley. What a season
Yeah.
he's had.
Exactly.
Well, we know which his biggest achievement is,
Yeah.
of course. Question number 4. How old was Elvis Presley when he died in 1977?
Oh my word.
I did have 3 possible answers to give you a little help here, but as you're off to a flyer, I think
You're not going to. Okay.
I'm not going to...
Now, being an expert on Elvis, I'm not.
Oh,
But let me just work this out. So
died in 77.
he died in 77. So he was in the US Army, wasn't he, in the 50s? So that would mean he would be, okay, so what was he, about 43?
Oh, 42.
I was going to say
42,
42, and
yeah.
I added a
Yeah.
year, I thought,
See, the 3 I had wrote down was 41, 42 or 44 were your options, so
oh
you'd
yeah,
probably plucked for 42 as well.
I probably would have done, yeah. But I don't get that right, do I?
No, I can't give you that. 3 out of 4 so far, but going
Very
well.
good.
And the last one, question number
Yeah.
5, movies. How many of the James Bond films have the word gold in their title?
Does that include Goldfinger, which has got,
Yeah,
which is not
so
a separate word?
No, just as long as it says gold in
As
the
long
title.
as it says gold somewhere. Okay, I haven't got a clue to this. This will be a complete guess.
Frankie's just got the fingers out figuring them out there.
Let's think of that.
It's hard, this one. I'll go for 4.
3.
Oh, is it 3?
It is.
Oh, okay.
Goldfinger, as you
Yeah.
pointed out. The man with the golden gun.
Gun, yeah, which I've remembered, yeah.
Golden eye.
The golden eye, I got that. I just assumed I
Yeah.
didn't know one, so.
Covering yourself with the
Yeah,
4th.
Yeah.
But, so, not bad. 3 out of 5.
Oh, thank
Well
you very
done,
much.
Steve.
Steve.
Well done, 3
Well
out
done.
of 5. Before you go, Steve, just a final thought and something to ponder. 5 years' time from today we sitting down doing this podcast, where would you like to see Sunderland Football Club?
Okay, so is this in my dreams or is it a realism?
Well, I guess your dreams could become reality. You've got a bit of a say in these things now.
I do. Well, I mean, obviously, I'd love to be back in the Premier League in 5 years' time. That's absolutely. But I don't want to put any pressure on anyone to.
If
to
Lee
say-
Johnson's listening.
I mean, it'd be great to be back in the Premier League. I mean, and have the. I mean, I think the way I would look at it better is I'd love to have a stage in 5 years' time when we've got the whole community absolutely 100% aligned with the club, to get 40-odd thousand in every week,
Okay, yeah.
and to be playing really great football that everybody could buy into. I think that would be excellent. I'd like to see us become a really modern business as well. I think relying on data and technology to be successful. I think all businesses are definitely using technology and data more effectively, and I think we can certainly get to the forefront of that. So I certainly think that's something that we ought to be able to invest in and get value out of. So I'd like us to be a modern business. Looking forwards as well, because I think that's the way Sunderland as a city is going as well. So I do think we'd be aligned with that as well. But I mean, obviously everybody really cares about the football, so I'd love us to be winning game after game in the Stadium of Light in front of a full stadium.
And an FA Cup final victory at Wembley to go with.
Now that would be just the icing on the cake, I think, which would be absolutely fantastic if we did get to achieve another cup win. Yeah,
Good stuff.
Steve Davison speaking to us here on SAFC Unfiltered, sponsored by Alpha Security. He gave a good insight, didn't he, Danny, to his role and what he wants to achieve while at the club?
Yeah, he did, and you can see he's passionate as well. I think the fact that he's obviously a Sunderland fan, as you mentioned during the podcast as well, and he'll be feeling it, and he'll want to see us getting back to where he believes the club belongs. And you know, he's mentioned there's a lot of work to go on over the next few months, years, to getting us back there. And he's come in. I think he's enthusiastic, and you can see he's looking forward to his role really in getting us going in the right direction again. In the other side of the football club, you know, the finances, the revenue, and I think he's looking forward to the challenge.
Yeah, we took this opportunity this week without there being a midweek game to squeeze in the recording of this podcast, but the games are going to come thick and fast, and I understand it as well, as I've just been told that so might some more podcasts as well. It's the run-in. How excited are you, and what do you think of Sunderland's chances of where we are right now?
Yeah, looking forward to it, and you know, we've mentioned there's confidence in the camp, isn't there? We should have 2, maybe 3 lads back from injury, hopefully for the weekend, or if not, certainly next weekend, with that double header coming over the Easter weekend. So it's vital that we get more lads back. I think we've done brilliant to get to where we have done, as we mentioned before the pod, that you know, we've had lads who are having to fill in and do shifts not in their preferred positions. You know, Luke O'Nien, prime example. But they've got on with it, and we've just been great, you know, clean sheets and just chipping away at teams in and around us and churning out results. And we're in a great position, but there's still a lot of hard work to go, isn't there? But I'm looking forward to it, and I just think every game at the minute feels bigger than the last one.
Well, thanks for that, Danny. Well, I'm sure I'll see you very soon. And to everyone listening, don't forget to subscribe on all your favourite podcast platforms. We'll speak to you very soon.